Good evening to all of you, and it's a real pleasure being present here on the occasion of DSCI's Mobile Security Conclave 2026. I think we are discussing something which is a very critical issue, and I'm glad that there have been a number of these events which bring cybersecurity and digital security to the forefront of people's attention. Oftentimes, we react or we respond only when there is something sensational, a cyber scam of some sort, or if there is a digital arrest of some kind. We tend to respond and we tend to reflect on how things are going so bad and how people need to be that much more careful. But we don't realize that a lot of it is just a force of having a set of habits which are sensible, which are commonsensical, and which will sort of protect you. And you just need to keep your wits about you in terms of think about what the consequences could be before doing something which could get you into a deeper sense of trouble. I guess part of the reason is that we are a trusting society, and when somebody asks us for information, we are more than willing to part with it. More information than we need to part with also is something that we can do very comfortably. But given the nature of the way the digital world works, the way that all information gets aggregated and a large amount of it is available, the risks to individuals become that much greater, and which is where I think a number of measures which the government has taken, including the Digital Personal Data Protection Act and various other cybersecurity initiatives, become so crucial and so important in order to protect individuals and protect society at large. I think there are many good things that come out of digital technology, many ways in which it can be used to speed up the whole process, many ways in which it can be used to add to the overall velocity of the economy, add to growth, and it's something which is so essential to everything that we are doing, and it becomes virtually second nature. But taking care of the security element or the cybersecurity element is something that at times we tend not to look at very carefully. Part of the reason has been that in order to ensure that the adoption of technology is rapid, we've let our guards down quite a bit. Government also hasn't regulated it so closely. Many provisions of the Information Technology Act were fundamentally promotional in order to enable technology to be more widely adopted. Many provisions were designed in such a way that the providers of the technology, people who put the technology together, were not held responsible for many things which, in hindsight, perhaps they should have been, but that was partly because to get people to make the investments and make sure that the technology really spreads. But today we've reached a stage where that technology is the backbone of the entire economic system that we see today. The entire way in which we communicate, the entire way in which financial transactions take place. Recently, I saw statistics which showed that almost 97% of retail transactions, financial transactions in terms of value in India today are digital. So which means that it is such a big proportion of the way the economy itself moves. In this context, if you don't pay adequate attention to security of how these transactions are carried out, then obviously we are not in a sensible place. We are not doing the right thing by ourselves. It's not in our enlightened self-interest. And what makes it more interesting, or in the Indian context, the fact that most people access the internet through mobile phones and through mobile data. That is the point of access. Today, more than 1 billion mobile phone users in the country, most of them smartphone users. That is their only point of access to the internet. And most of us also, even if you have alternate accesses, you most of the transactions you do are based on mobile phones, which then means that you need to be much more careful in the way that ecosystem is handled and in the way that we are able to address those concerns. So all of this means that we need to periodically get together, discuss, because it's something which concerns all of us. It concerns the users ultimately, of course, but it concerns the people who manufacture the phones, the people who supply all the software which runs on those phones, the people who run applications on those phones. Everybody is part of this, is a stakeholder in this, and is a crucial stakeholder in how this entire practice can evolve. Convenience is very important. At the same time, security is very important, which means then that you have to start thinking of security by design. You need to think of that up front and figure out how exactly you design this whole framework to make sure that you have a secure by design approach. Otherwise, of course, we can keep making movies and we can keep making shows about how people rip people off using mobile phone technology. And, that's also a very successful business. One, to actually rip people off. Clearly, there is incomes which are generated there, and then you sort of write about it or make a movie about it. That's also a very lucrative kind of business. But that's incidental to this whole thing. I think fundamentally it's about protecting people against crime and ensuring that we have a framework in which it becomes secure by design. And this is not something which is going to happen by the government just mandating certain things. Mandation is one part of the story, but more important is how the industry adapts to it, how people by and large are more aware of it, and they try to make sure that it becomes something which is part of their lives. As I said in the beginning, it's a question of how we also adapt our behavior to this whole thing. We're a very trusting people. I recall a few years ago, I used to be the finance secretary in the state of Tamil Nadu, and we were doing a large program, the integrated financial and HR management system across all the sub-treasuries in the state, some 300 of them, all the entire financial transactions to be handled on that system. And I went to a remote sub-treasury just to understand how the process was working and to meet the officers and people who worked there. And the treasury officer I said, okay, why don't you sit down and show me how you actually do this? So he sat down at the desk. He was an old man, probably a little older than me at that point. And then suddenly he looked up and he turned and saw a really young guy who was standing there, who was probably a contract employee, called him and said, what is my username and password? And that guy keyed it in, and then he started operating. Trusting. I mean, this youngster probably knew how the whole system operated and could do it. But which is when I realized that you have a username plus password mechanism to have all these people access the system. That's not secure enough for something like this, and we had to go back and rethink the entire security system of this, saying that, one fine morning, God knows who will take how much money out of the treasury simply because somebody has shared a username and password. So it is behavioral at one level, and it is so much else at another level. And, it's just like, two Indians on a train. I mean, you're willing to talk about everything, even deeply personal, for no reason at all. And likewise, anyone asks you for any information, you're very happy to part with it. You're willing to volunteer even more than what is required. And therefore, culturally, some of these things need to change. Culturally, people need to be aware, need to be secure about it, and also be aware of law. And sometimes the lack of awareness of law itself is a problem. I mean, there's nothing called, there's no notion of digital arrest. The only kind of arrest that there is in the world is, a physical arrest. Probably they say e-courts, and they see that nowadays even courts function online, and therefore, why can't the police function online is probably what they think of. Probably they see that, you can actually get bail in an online hearing, so why can't you be arrested in an online hearing? Probably is something that they think of. But I think a lot of it is about awareness, a lot of it is about behavior, a lot of it is about design. And that's why the human in the loop is so important. And the human in the loop becomes even more important in the AI age, and in the way that AI itself can be used to deepen some of these threats and make some of these threats more of an issue for society at large. And this kind of fear, and sometimes the irrational fear, means that even when good things are done, there is a fear that when government is trying to do something which is different and good, like, for instance, in the Aadhaar ecosystem and so on, people then tend to be naturally suspicious, saying that, how will this get used and what will happen about us? And I'm very glad that Mr. Bhuvnesh Kumar is here today, and in the next session, hopefully, he will talk about some of the very interesting initiatives that have been taken in that space, both to enhance security and to enhance convenience, in a way that people can securely use their identity information without oversharing data. I think the balance between sharing in the correct element, sharing in a manner that you reduce risks, is something that the government has very consciously tried to address, and I'm sure he'd be able to share some of that. And some of these behavioral modifications clearly are needed, some technology changes are clearly needed, some tightening of regulations is clearly needed in this space as we move forward. And I'm extremely happy that we have this sounding board and these kind of events which sort of periodically highlight the importance of some of this. And that's one of the reasons that I rarely miss a cybersecurity related event, because of its importance, because it's important to underline this, it bears constant repetition, and every possible occasion needs to be used to underline the importance of how we handle this. Once again, I congratulate and commend DSCI for having organized this event, especially relating to mobile technology, which I think is the closest user interface they can be, and that's what affects a lot of people directly. Very timely and very appropriate. Thank you all once again.